Hi, everybody. Al Bernstein here with another one of my boxing hangouts. This should be a special one for a couple of reasons. One, we're going to be previewing the fight between Canelo Alvarez and Alfredo Angulo, and also talking about what should be a very entertaining undercard of that Showtime pay-per-view match that's set for this Saturday, March 8th. But we have a very special guest we're going to introduce in a moment that's going to help us talk about it. She is a wonderful reporter for ESPN Deportes and does great work both in her Spanish-speaking jobs and English assignments. Claudia Trejos. Claudia, how are you?
Very well, Al. Thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure. I'm flattered to be part of this hangout.
Well, we're happy to have you. And let me introduce now also the gentleman who produces the Hangouts, Mr. Dan Parks. Dan, you put together a nice show here today, number one, by getting Claudia on board, and we've got some good topics to discuss.
Thanks, Al. Excited about this one. I'm really excited about the fight on Saturday. I'm properly representing.
Yes,
we
got
the kids ready to go. I think we've got a really great matchup, and you know, the internet is alive with a lot of different opinions about which way this is going to go, and I know that both of you have some great insight to kind of lead people down the path of what we might see on Saturday night. Yeah,
we got a lot to talk about. And Claudia, you, of course, cover both these men a lot in your endeavors in covering boxing. And let's talk about this match in general first. Did you think when they were setting this up that it was a match that had a certain appeal, and did you kind of anticipate that at some point that Angulo might be the opponent for Canelo?
No, I did not anticipate Angulo as being the opponent for Canelo because of how he lost against Lara, not necessarily because he doesn't have the ability. It's just because I figured after such a heartfelt loss where he actually left everything in the ring, I thought he was going to take a little longer to recover. But nonetheless, it does have an appeal because we have two very, very hard-fighting Mexicans. And that on its own is going to give us a show. I know that Canelo is a flat-footed, pretty much vertical, horizontal type fighter, and so is a Canelo and Angulo. I mean, so we're just going for all cojones out, big time. They're going to give us a show. There's no other way to put it. They're going to give us a show. It's going to be a brawl. It's going to be a man's fight. This is not, I think technique and strategy is going to go out the window. The first man to go is the first man to win, because here, whoever takes a step back is really the guy that's going to end up losing.
Fascinating. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about, so this matchup, let's talk about Canelo first of all. Canelo is a fighter who was undefeated until he took on Floyd Mayweather in his last fight. He lost, and of course, everyone has lost to Floyd Mayweather thus far. My question would be, does he take something mental away from that fight that's either negative or positive, and how does he rebound from that?
Well, Al, at 23, I think this was a great lesson for him to learn. One of the things that I admire from Canelo is his ability to assimilate all the experiences he's ever had. Fighting with Mayweather is obviously a crash course on technique. Mayweather is a defensive fighter, something that Canelo had never had a chance to face or endure. I'm not going to say that he was damaged physically per se. I think mentally he was not prepared for such an elusive fighter. Mentally he was not prepared for his speed. I think he walked into that ring with no plan, and that on its own was a lesson. Now, are we going to see a different fighter against Angulo? I'm pretty sure we're going to see perhaps more footwork, more mobility. I think he's going to cut the corners a little bit more. Not that he's going to need that much against Angulo, because, again, we're talking about two flat-footed and two brawlers that are going to go head-to-head. But I think mentally he's a different fighter. I'm not going to say that it took away from him. On the contrary, I think that fight against Mayweather gave him a lot. It's a crash course on technique, strategy, and being able to follow a plan. That on its own, it takes fighters from being good to being great.
That's a mouthful, and very, very well put. And I think part of the issue, as you point out, was that Canelo in the fight with Floyd Mayweather, at first it appeared his plan, in fact, was to outbox Mayweather, that he was going to not be. But I think at the end of the day, I agree with you. There was no plan. Because he wasn't overly aggressive offensively. He didn't use the fact that he was the biggest, strongest man that Mayweather was facing. And fascinating what you said, because you can come away from that failure, and we're going to find out we may not find out in this fight. We may find out down the road if he fights a Lara or somebody like that. But if you come out of that and you understand the lessons that you've learned, the ones you're talking about, then clearly it could make him a better fighter. Now, for Canelo in this fight, he's going to be swarmed by Angulo. He's going to have to counterpunch effectively, and he's going to have to, as you said, he may use a few more angles against Angulo. How much of an edge do you think the hand speed of Canelo is in this fight?
Oh, big time. It's a major difference, especially against an Angulo that comes after a Lara. We're talking about a completely different fighter. This is a fighter that never knew how to retreat, never knew how to step back. He definitely does not know how to defend himself. His guard is completely open. His defense is totally porous. And against Lara, he took the brunt of that, of those defects, of those shortcomings. So I'm pretty sure this, on Angulo's side, there is a mental issue. I think that Canelo's speed will overwhelm Angulo. I'm not saying that it's going to take over and perhaps Angulo is just going to turn around, because Angulo doesn't know how to do that. The one thing we do know is that he had a very hard-fought fight against Lara, and mentally I want to see how he comes out of that. This is a very important test for Angulo, and only then will we know if he will be overwhelmed by somebody like Canelo. I don't think so, but we'll see. We'll see March 8th.
Let's go back now for Alfredo Angulo. Let's go back to the Lara fight, and let's talk a little bit about Alfredo Angulo in addition now. That fight, which I thought was one of the potential fights of the year, for me, I actually picked it as my fight of the year because it was so exciting. Angulo was able to do something that no one had ever done before, and he did it twice, and that was knock Erislandy Lara down. He forced Erislandy Lara to fight an offensive fight, right? Unless you force him to do that. And what Lara showed us was that if given as you say, a fairly open target, Lara has power in his punches when he can land them, and of course did huge damage to that eye of Angulo. This leads us to a point you made before we went on the air that I thought was fascinating about whether Alfredo Angulo is in fact damaged heading into this fight.
Let's start with the fact that El Perro Angulo is not a fighter that understands defense. El Perro Angulo is a fighter that just knows how to walk into the ring and just throw punches. This is a man that knows how to, he's a warrior.
Yeah.
And when he faced Lara, I don't think he understood what Lara brings into the ring, which is the Cuban school of boxing. Strategically speaking, he's completely prepared. Now, was he taken by surprise by Angulo's power? Absolutely. He did go down. And guess what? The minute that he went down, he said, I'm going to take this guy all the way and I'm going to use my power. He's one of the few Cubans that has been able to do that transition from being a defensive fighter to being an aggressive fighter. And Lara showed us that he has the power and the chin to take it and can recover from going down, both mentally and physically. With that being said, in an opportunity that I had to speak with Lara's and Lara's friends, he literally said to me, I don't understand how he took it, because there were times when I actually hit him, and first, he was squirming. Second, when he used that eye as a target. The minute that I knew I was doing damage, I was going for that eye. And I could literally feel my punch just going deeper and deeper. He really doesn't understand how Angulo took all that. But with that being said, mentally, we're talking about a completely different fight against Canelo. This is a completely different fighter. This man went through some serious abuse against Lara, mentally and physically, because for the first time, somebody got up after being taken down twice and saying, okay, this is all you got, let's go for it. And he had to turn his back.
I have to say that I noticed something. I noticed something in some of the recent photographs also. His eye still doesn't look right. still looks like there's been some damage, some serious.
Which leads me to my first point. It was surprising to me that he would take this fight because we know that Canelo hits hard. Canelo is a hard fighter, and he packs a punch. And I thought that Angulo was going to take a little bit longer to recover, to let everything heal. Let's talk about scar tissue here. This could blow up like this any minute now. Reminds me of Eric El Terrible Morales. Those eyes, those orbitals, they swell up the first punch.
That's really a good point, and it's going to be a key issue in this fight. And it's also now Virgil Hunter, who is of course the new trainer of Alfredo Angulo, has been trying to work with him to shore up that defense a bit. The problem is it's very hard to get a veteran, obviously, at this juncture in his career, whose defense is his offense, and improve that aspect of his game. I know they've worked very hard on it, but and it's going to be fascinating, as you point out. Alfredo Angulo has lost before. In fact, he's even stopped before. But this is the first time anyone made him quit in a fight. Mm-hmm. And I'm putting the word quit in quotes because it really is the wrong word. Make him stop fighting because Alfredo Angulo has no quit in him, and that was a serious injury. And again, as you point out, coming back so soon. So we'll see how that goes and how it affects his aggressiveness early in the fight as well. Let's talk a little bit about the undercard, which is, in my opinion, pretty interesting. And you have a fascinating opinion about one of the undercard fights. Leo Santa Cruz taking on Christian Mahares, defending his title. And Christian Mahares has been a very, very good fighter at several weight divisions. The perception probably among the Santa Cruz people is that Mahares has maybe passed his best days, even though he's not a real old fighter. You feel differently, though, don't you?
Yes. And before I even go into that comment, I have to say that Leo Santa Cruz, to me, was one of the greatest revelations we've had in the last 5 years. Extraordinary fighter, very smart, very composed, and technically speaking, sound. Not very sound. Yeah. He's your typical Mexican fighter that somehow has a little bit of mobility. He knows how to cut the ring, which is a nice combination. It's very nice to see. I did see a lot of pores in his defense. There was a little hesitation against Cesar Seda. Now, that hesitation against Cesar Seda was good enough, or let's say wasn't bad enough for him to lose that fight. But Mahares, for all intents and purposes, is a lot stronger, a lot more experienced, and it scares me a little bit because, like you said, if they're underestimating Mahares' experience, they're in for a treat. They have to be very aware of the man that they're facing on this event and this bout, because this is a guy that, again, has no quit in him. This is a man that has 24 knockouts in 49 fights, and among those in different weight divisions. Leo has never gone past Super Bantam. Let's take that in consideration. Mahares has been around a lot, and that's not even counting what he did on the clandestine fights. So this is a guy that is very well groomed. I'm not going to say that strategically he's very clean, no, but there's something to be said about street fighting, about knowing how to work the corners, knowing how to work the judges, and knowing how to work the referee.
Yep. Mahares is a lefty, as was Seda. And that's probably that is another issue because Santa Cruz has had a few issues when he's fought. I mean, everyone does when they fight lefties if you're a right-handed fighter, as Santa Cruz is. But that's yet another part of this equation. The thing about Leo Santa Cruz, and you mentioned it, is that he's been one of the most exciting and interesting fighters to watch in the last several years. And that's, I think, essentially what is so appealing about him. He often averages 90 to 100 punches around, and is a fighter who, when he steps in the ring, will create an interesting fight.
Which is the one thing we didn't see against Seda. If we look at those punch stats, his production went down at least 50%. Yeah. So is it a transition into sitting into his punches and looking for a power punch, or was it that he couldn't handle somebody like Seda? That remains to be seen. So I think Mahares is going to be perhaps one of the toughest tests for Leo Santa Cruz in this time in his career. Okay, very good point. Yeah, and of course he is a former champion in a couple of weight divisions. Exactly. Another fight on that undercard, Carlos Molina, who is the 154-pound championship,
taking on Jermall Charlo. Now, Jermall's brother Jermell just won a very impressive victory, and Jermall, who is his twin, getting a world title shot even before his brother. Carlos Molina is one of those hard luck fighters who finally got a break in a very close fight. He beat Ishe Smith to win the 154-pound title, and now this is his first defense. Is Jermall, the question I guess is Jermall Charlo in at 17-0 over his head against the veteran Carlos Molina, or will the youth of Charlo come to the forefront?
That's $1 million question.
You're supposed to have all the answers for us, Claudia. I'm not a boxing expert, so I better ask you.
Oh, really? Oh, you're only a Hall of Famer. I just get paid to look cute.
It's a lot more than that, but you do look cute.
Thank you. Even on the computer cam, not bad, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the $1 million question. Time and time again, we've always put youth against experience. What's really going to come through? And in Carlos Molina, we see again a very hard fighter. Now, Jermall Charlo, he's got great mobility. His footwork is impeccable. Sometimes he just prances a little bit too much, which leads to perhaps wasting too much energy in those first couple of rounds. I'm hoping that he's willing to just sit down, take a breathe, be a little bit more patient. When he's facing somebody like Carlos Molina that definitely can go to the distance and can really take a punch and also give a punch, this is going to be a tough test for Charlo. And it'd be interesting to see how Carlos will be able to just cut him and make sure that he doesn't run too much, make sure that he doesn't dance too much. And we'll see. I see Carlos Molina taking it in the last, the very later end of the fight. And I don't think he's going to knock him down or knock him out. I think he's just going to take the win by decision, only because he's going to be able to just work him and work him and work him until Jermall is just going to run out of gas.
Well, it's interesting. So the experience of Molina and the number of important fights he's been in could be too much. And, of course, Molina has faced infinitely better competition than Jermall Charlo. That's a given, though, because Charlo is just getting his first opportunity. But we'll see how that plays into it.
But now my question to you is, yes, okay, Carlos Molina has been into some serious bouts, serious fights, long-distance fights. So is he really run down by now after all these fights? Is Jermall Charlo going to be able to just take advantage of the fact that he's fresh and young? That's $1 million question. I insist. You know, we're talking again, veterans against youth, experience against extraordinary opponents, or youth, freshness, being able to keep it tight in the ring. We'll see what really prevails. This is going to be an interesting
and the
fight.
Charlo brothers are overachievers. You know, I thought the last fight, Jermall Charlo, I didn't think he was going to be able to win his brother. I thought that, well, I didn't know for sure, but my feeling was that it was going to be a tough fight for him to win. And here's Jermall, also in a very difficult fight. They are very confident young men. And they're trained by Ronnie Shields, who's a terrific trainer. And so I like Carlos Molina a lot. I think he's a terrific veteran fighter. And so exactly the way it lines out, which is what we said, the experience versus the youth, is what it is. And Carlos Molina is an experienced fighter who is not on the downhill slide, we don't think. So we'll see how that goes. Now, the other fight on that card, a name from the past in a way, even though he's only 28 years old, Jorge Linares, who was once considered a huge budding star and has tremendous offensive skills and explosiveness, taking on Nihito Arakawa, who was last seen in the United States in that amazing fight against Omar Figueroa, in which they each threw over 1,000 punches, landed over 1,000. It was a staggering fight. And what makes this fight interesting is that Linares, while he's so great offensively, has been known to be hurt and has had some chin issues.
That's you pretty much nailed it. Now, Arakawa really doesn't have that much of a punch to pack. So that would literally put an advantage to Linares, just because we know he can go the distance. If he doesn't get hurt, then he will be able to take Arakawa. Arakawa is literally the type of guy that would just drain you because he's running and he's just like trying to overwhelm you with the amount of punches that he generates,
Right.
but not necessarily the power. Now, Linares has never really lived up to his potential. Is it time for him to do that or prove it that he can actually take it a step forward or a step higher? This is the question that I want to see answered on Saturday. Does he really does he have what it takes to take it a step up?
Also, Arakawa, of course, in that fight with Figueroa, took an absurd amount of punishment. We'll see if he's recovered from all that. That was a while ago, but this fight could mirror that Figueroa Arakawa fight, because if Linares doesn't have the power to put Arakawa away, this may be something that at least approximates the Figueroa fight, though we may never see its like again for a while. Go ahead.
Just to put things in perspective, out of his 35 wins, we have 23 by knockout. That gives him a rough 60% knockout. And I think this is the time. He understands that he wants to, given the weight division and the kind of paychecks let's follow the money, the kind of paychecks that he can really bring in at this weight division, he understands that he has to finish Arakawa soon and decisively if he wants to bring the real dough.
Yeah, it's a good point, because this fight is about him marketing himself.
Yes.
And Figueroa went the full 12. He wants to say, look, everyone knows offensively I'm a juggernaut. I can knock him out. We'll see how it goes, because Jorge Linares is at that point in his career where he needs to have impressive wins, right, to move ahead. So that's on March 8th. We're going to have the this Saturday the pay-per-view featuring all the fighters that we've talked about. Claudia, let me ask you. Now, you're going to be there covering for ESPN Deportes, I know, as you always are. That is a window to the world that I know you've really enjoyed being a part of. And as you've demonstrated here tonight, you joked a little bit before about your appeal. But the fact is, you really know this sport, and you love covering this sport. And I know you cover some other sports as well, but boxing is really the main thing. ESPN Deportes is probably one of the great platforms in which to cover the sport, and specifically this fight.
Yes, this is a huge fight for us. Again, let's go back to the appeal. Forget about strategy and technique. We're having two full-blown Mexicans that know exactly what they need to go in there for. They're two real hardcore brawlers that are going to give us a toe-to-toe, cara-cara, hombro-hombro. It's going to be exciting to watch. For the showdown, it's just a showdown. This is not going to be a technical fight. It's not a Danny Swift Garcia. It's not a Floyd Mayweather. It's Matisse, full blown, but now at 160 pounds. Yeah,
exactly. Now I mentioned that you do work for Deportes, and you've done, I know, work for Showtime and many other people. You're gifted because you can do a great job, whether it's to a Spanish-speaking audience or English-speaking audience. Do you ever find yourself having a hard time making the transition back and forth, or is it easy for you? Not easy, I shouldn't say easy, but is it seamless for you?
No, it's not seamless. A lot of times it depends who I'm conversing at that moment, and then if I have to do the transition, I have to really think about it. Once I warm up, it's okay. It also depends on what time of the day. If it's by the end of the day, oh my Lord, it's all out the window. My accent comes out, all my Spanish words come out. It's like, please forgive me. Just use the dictionary and follow. Just catch up. I'll become like Ricky Ricardo on a drop of a hat.
That's a great reference. Perfect. Yeah. And the interesting thing about, I think, your position is, to me anyway, is that because the sport is so driven by the Latino and Hispanic fans that are, I think, the in many respects, the blood that pumps through the sport of boxing. You have the best of both worlds because you're appealing to that audience, which is so friendly to the sport of boxing, but also often to the English fans who love it.
Yes, I'm blessed. I'm really blessed. Born and raised, obviously, in Colombia. This is, after soccer, boxing is the most important thing in Colombia. And we live and die with this. And we're so passionate that we understand what it takes to get up there and just pour your heart out for 12 rounds, 10 rounds, 8 rounds. We have much respect for that. We could also say we're just a little bit violent, but you know, I'm Colombian. It just goes with the flow. It's in my blood. What can I say?
Part of the landscape.
Exactly. You know, it's what we do. It's how we live. It's passion. It's entertainment. And then I also find that in America, we have the best boxing in the world. We have anybody that wants to be anybody in boxing has to make it to America. Period. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are in your countries. We have extraordinary talent in different Latin American countries, in Europe. I mean, the talent is everywhere. But in order for you to be recognized, you have to be in America. So what better place than to be bilingual, bicultural in America and be able to talk about boxing? You know, a jab is a jab, an uppercut is an uppercut. You can't really go wrong with those. You know what I mean?
No, that's true. That's true. Well, and you know a lot more than that. Yeah, it's very interesting. And now, before I let you go, I want to ask you also about a fight that we have coming up on the 15th. It'll be in Puerto Rico, interestingly. Now, are you going to be down there covering the Danny Garcia-Mauricio Herrera fight?
Of course.
All right. I figured you were. That's an interesting fight. You know,
yes.
Herrera is the only man to beat Ruslan, well, other than Tim Bradley, the first man. He was the first man, and she's lost twice, first man to beat Ruslan Provodnikov. And that kind of gives him, in my opinion, a nice entree to this fight with Danny Garcia. Of course, Garcia is going to be the favorite in the fight. And Danny Garcia, if he needed to win people over, certainly did so with his last win over Lucas Matisse, which was an extraordinary performance.
Yeah. Oh, let's talk about underdog. A number of people
thought he wouldn't win.
Oh, he was completely the underdog. I don't think even Lucas Matisse understood how far back Danny Swift Garcia was. I mean, I was talking with my colleagues from Argentina. They flew only to see that fight. Forget about Mayweather. They came just to see Lucas Matisse take that and, you know, just another win, add another win to his record.
Yeah.
And my gosh, all of a sudden we woke up and it's like Danny Swift Garcia was dominating this guy and he literally neutralized any power that Matisse brought in. And even more appealing is the fact that he's going back to his roots. He's been criticized for a long time for being, you know, Puerto Rican roots, not being true to his roots. Right. Angel Garcia is not true to his roots because they don't speak proper Spanish, whatever, you know, whatever that is. Really? I mean, the fact that he speaks Spanish somewhat, because I've spoken to him, I mean, it's not perfect, but, you know, he makes a point. I think this is fantastic, especially right now when the island that gave us so many fantastic fighters is in a little drought. The last one was Rocky Martinez that lost against Mikey Garcia. So they're really starving for a champ. And who better than Danny Swift Garcia? Perfect combination between a brawler, a strategist, and a technician. And very calm, way beyond his years, extremely smart. And I like that. And I like the fact that he's facing Mauricio Herrera, and with all due respect, yes, he did beat Provodnikov, but we don't know when. Let's make that clear. When did he beat Provodnikov? It was definitely not in the recent years. And let's talk about maturity. Provodnikov has gone, you know, to a completely different level. And, you know, that fight against Timothy Bradley, you know, if that says anything about Provodnikov's power and diligence and just persistence, that was it. So Mauricio Herrera, I don't think would have what it takes to beat Provodnikov today.
Yeah, probably not. That's a good point. Provodnikov has certainly gotten to be a better fighter. Danny Garcia, you know, you talked about what he brings to the table, that he's a good strategist in the ring, and he's a very good technician with certainly enough pop in his punch he knocked out Khan, though other people have heard Khan. But the one thing that I think Danny Garcia showed also in this fight was an amazing chin, because when Matisse was able to land his power, the punches that would always lead then to him being able to follow up and hurt somebody or knock them out. The one that is etched in my brain is the right hand that landed, that knocked the mouthpiece into about the fourth row.
Yes.
Danny Garcia, from Danny Garcia. And Garcia was able to take those punches, and that, beyond everything else, in addition to his performance, was amazing, because there were rounds that Garcia clearly lost in that fight, and it was a competitive fight in many ways, but he always controlled space and distance and then ultimately Matisse wasn't able to hurt him enough, and so he got the win. And now, as you said, Danny Garcia goes back to Puerto Rico, and as a kind of an additional marketing tool to get that country behind him. And like you, I have nothing but respect for the Puerto Rican fans and that country as it relates to boxing. It is, with the possible exception of Mexico, and of course they've had their great rivalries, it's a place that loves boxing as much as any country in the world.
Yep. For being such a small country, their percentage of champions is amazing. Amazing. But the one thing that I don't agree with Danny not being hurt, I think the contrary. I think that Danny was hurt, but his ability to assimilate the pain, assimilate the punishment, and be able to come back, because he was hurt. He did feel, because Matisse doesn't just stick stamps. Matisse can pack, look at his percentage. But the fact that he took it, and we could see that he just was taken aback. The smartest thing he ever did was just take a couple steps back, keep his distance, keep his jab in front of him, give himself time to recover, and then go back. That is just brilliance. That is sweet science at its best.
Yeah, no, he handled it very well. My point is that most times when fighters get hit with those kind of shots by Matisse, they have no choice.
Wow.
Those things with Danny. So his chin allowed him to do that. And that was in question coming into this fight, because nobody had been able to stand up to Matisse, for the most part, had been able to stand up to Matisse's power without at least going down once in the fight. So interesting. Well, we'll see what that fight has to bring with it on the 15th. This weekend should be a lot of fun. I know you're going to be covering for ESPN Deportes. And when does your coverage start?
Well, we start Friday with the weigh-in, and then it's going to be a short one. We'll do the weigh-in, and then we'll do, obviously, pre, and then we'll do post, and obviously we'll talk some more about the whole fight on Sunday.
All right. Well, everyone on that channel will look forward to seeing you, and everywhere else that you end up showing up, because a lot of times through interviews that people do with you, like this one, and different reports, they get a chance to see you perform. And I think you're just one of the best people covering boxing out there today, and that's why I couldn't wait to have you on one of the Hangouts.
Thank you, Al. But just before we go, because as excited as I am to see Danny Swift Garcia, and because I'm just a huge fan, I'm going to admit it, Juan Manuel Lopez going back against Daniel Ponce de Leon.
Yes.
This is a rematch we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
And remember, he went down in the first round. So I'm wondering if Juanma has what it takes to come back after the 2 losses against City Salido, then a loss against Mikey Garcia, and now facing Ponce de Leon, who's also a hardcore Mexican fighter with a warrior's heart.
That's interesting you brought that fight up. You're right. And we're going to find out just how far back Juanma has slipped. And whether Ponce de Leon, obviously they feel, well, this is a different Juanma and we were going to beat him. And they were shocked that he lost by knockout in the first round anyway. That was something never in a million years did they expect to happen. So, yeah, I agree with you. That one's going to be intriguing. And it'll also be interesting to see how Juanma is treated by the fans in Puerto Rico at this point in his career. It'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, it's going to be fun. All right,
well, we also have Wilder on that card also, which means
Deontay Wilder.
We get to watch somebody get knocked out in 2 seconds. It'll be great.
Right. He's taking on Malik Scott.
Dan, shame on you.
Yeah. He's taking on Malik Scott, and we'll just see if Malik Scott has something worthy of testing him. We'll see. Dan, you're a cynic. What can I tell you?
Sorry. Well,
But you are cynic, so that's all it matters.
I want to
see you. We keep you, though, Dan. We keep you. We love you, though.
Yeah, there you go. See, if Claudia loves you, then I got to keep you.
I got to get that Tyson Fury fight going here.
That's what we need. Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. That's for sure. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us. It was a delight to have you visit. I hope you'll do it again sometime.
Please. I'd love to come back. Thank you for inviting me. Dan, thank you for your patience walking me through all this. And thank you again. And you're more than happy. I'm more than glad to be part of this. And please, don't forget me. I'm on the other side of the arena.
You rock.
Thanks, Claudia.
Bye.
So, and Claudia will be there, as we said, covering for for ESPN Deportes during the course of this weekend and post-fight as well. Dan, we are going to come back with our next hangout shortly in March. We haven't picked the exact date, and we're probably going to revisit our friend Colleen Aycock with her book about Tex Rickard, correct?
Oh, yes, I can't wait. Again, for those of you that haven't had a chance, Al did a review on her book on the Boxing Channel, so you might want to click over there and you'll learn a little bit about this book about Tex Rickard. And, you know, he really was Don King before there was Don King.
Yes.
He was a little bit of P.T. Barnum. He was a little bit of everything. This guy, the stories about him are absolutely amazing, and how many things that he did at the beginning of boxing, as far as we know it, that are still being done today, that he really did in the very beginning, which is
an amazing guy. You know, he was, as you said, a great promoter. He was a cowboy, which makes him near and dear to me. Before that, even, and a rancher, and then became a great promoter in boxing and other things, and really invented boxing at Madison Square Garden. Yeah, you can go on Boxing Channel at boxingchannel.tv and see my blog on Tex Rickard. Also, a reminder that we'll be having coverage all week, and already do have coverage up on the Boxing Channel at boxingchannel.tv about the Canelo Angulo fight, and of course, you'll get a chance to see me announce the fight on Showtime, the pay-per-view this weekend. And
if you have an opportunity and you want to have a little fun, you can go over to Al's Facebook page at facebook.com/Al Bernstein Live, and you can put in your guess as to how many total punches will be thrown during the Canelo Angulo fight. And the person who comes closest to that number without going over is going to receive one of these shirts from the event, signed and dedicated from Al Bernstein.
Yes, that's exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up, because we've had great response to the contest, and we want to continue those. So we will see you all soon. Keep your eye on Twitter and Facebook for our next boxing hangout. I hope you all get a chance to tune in and buy the fight. And our thanks again to Claudia Trejos for being with us, and we will see you next time on the Boxing Hangout.
Bye, everyone.